A Republican Senate candidate in Montana might have been caught lying about a battle wound. GOP candidate Tim Sheehy claims that he had suffered a gunshot wound while serving as a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan, possibly by friendly fire as a result of a ricocheted bullet during a firefight in 2012. The highly decorated ex-military member, is a veteran, made these claims, but according to newly revealed documents, that actually might not have happened. And so we're going to try to figure this out. Now, the Washington Post revealed earlier this month that Sheehy had reported to officials that he accidentally shot himself in the arm 3 years later in 2015 when he accidentally discharged a firearm in Montana's Glacier National Park. So that's a whoopsie. Now, when that story came out, though, he then told the Post that he was actually lying about accidentally shooting himself so that he could protect himself and his former platoon mates from facing a potential military investigation into this old bullet wound. I don't know if that's the case, okay? A newly discovered detailed written statement from Sheehy to a law enforcement officer confirms that he had accidentally shot himself in 2015 when his Colt 45 revolver fell and discharged in the national park. As a highly trained and combat experienced wounded veteran, I can assure you that this was an unfortunate accident, and we were grateful no other persons or property were damaged, she said in a 2015 statement, apologizing for illegally discharging his firearm in the park. The statement was obtained by the Post after it filed a Freedom of Information Act request. Now, why would he lie about this? Well, he said, due to my ongoing security clearance and involvement with national defense-related contracts, I request leniency with any charges related to this unfortunate accident. Okay. Now, Sheehy had told investigators that he had kept his gun in his vehicle as bear protection, according to the National Service Park documents released to the Post, but he had told the newspaper that he had made up the accidental shooting story in October of 2015 to cover up a wound he says he sustained while fighting in Afghanistan 3 years earlier. A National Park Service summary of the incident, which was also included in the newly released documents, says an unidentified park visitor had reported an accidental gun discharge in Logan Pass, which differs from Sheehy's current account. That law enforcement was first contacted by personnel at a hospital that treated him for wounds he now says he received from falling during a hike. The summary notes, the summary does not identify the park visitor who had made the report on a gun discharge, to which, of course, the lawyers, Daniel Watkins, says, oh, that park visitor? Well, maybe he doesn't exist. Now, the Park Service documents were filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Montana. Sheehy went to a hospital in Kalispell to treat the gunshot wound, according to the records, and he first spoke to the ranger who responded to the shooting call at the hospital and later had paid a $525 fine for illegally discharging his weapon in the national park. She claims that now the gun never went off and that he had actually tripped and fell. He told the Post he decided to lie to hospital staff and then the ranger to ensure that an older wound would not launch a military investigation that he says could have harmed the careers of his former platoon mates, according to his campaign and an attorney who represents him. That attorney, once again, said the ranger never indicated that he had interviewed that individual as part of his investigation and suggested that hospital staff notified park dispatchers of the incident after Sheehy lied about the accidental shooting. Watkins wrote in a letter to the Post, the release reports corroborate the information we have provided, and they confirm Mr. Sheehy's recollection of what took place. I am confused. Okay, who's telling the truth? I mean, this is the problem when you stack up lies, right? When you start stacking them, it's hard to keep them straight because you're going to end up having to tell more lies to cover for the original lie. And at some point, you're going to mess up and you're going to get found out. And so I don't know who's telling the truth. Okay, I don't know. All I can tell you is that his credibility, not exactly very high. All right, and that's considering it's not just this. That also takes into account the fact that this is not the first mistruth that he was caught in. It's apparently this guy has a history of doing some embellishments. All right. Now, Sheehy, for example, had told the Working Ranch radio podcast in October of 2023 that he had grown up in rural Minnesota, in the country. Quote, although we're not farmers, I grew up in an old farmstead and we were surrounded by farm land. Okay, well, when you think about that, right, you might think, okay, so you're on a dirt road and you're surrounded by farms everywhere. Well, is that the case? Not really. According to his own campaign, he actually grew up in a multi-million-dollar lake house in Shoreview, Minnesota. Shoreview happens to be a nice little suburb north of St. Paul with a population of roughly 27,000. Okay? She's childhood home on Turtle Lake happens to be about 13 miles from the Minnesota state capitol, 13 miles from the home of the Minnesota Vikings at the U.S. Bank Stadium, and 20 miles from Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport and the Mall of America. Now, that the property itself sits just 3 miles from a Trader Joe's, closer than the nearest Fleet Farm, which happens to be a very popular, outdoorsy type of store in Minnesota. Sheehy was also educated 16 miles away from St. Paul Academy, one of the Twin Cities' elite private high schools, which counts the writer F. Scott Fitzgerald as an alumnus. Sheehy's parents, to show you how much that home is worth, they had sold that 4-bedroom house for $2.2 million in 2017. I know home prices are insane, okay, but generally, if you're in a rural area surrounded by farmland, you're not going to get $2.2 million for that. Generally. All right. Now, Shoreview is actually considered to be a nice middle to upper middle class suburban neighborhood. Some very quiet spaces, good schools. It sounds like a lovely area, by the way. Niche, a popular online source for school rankings and community reviews, called Shoreview one of the best places to live in Minnesota, and even bestowed the community with the distinction of #1 best suburb to buy a house in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. If you can afford $2.2 million, that is. According to Niche's description, living in Shoreview offers residents a dense suburban feel, and most residents own their homes. And it doesn't exactly sound like the poor, rural, gotta make it on your own, outside the city's slicker lifestyle country vibe. I'm just saying. Now, that said, this guy is apparently a rancher now, as he's running for office in Montana. The Daily Beast reported last June that she hadn't actually registered cattle or farm animals as required by the state. Now, if you have cattle and farm animals, you have to register them. Of course, if you do, you actually have to pay additional taxes on that. Oops. So he might be, might have been not paying the taxes that he owes if he has these farm animals. Now, when asked about this, his campaign's like, oh, yeah, no, oops, made a mistake. We're going to have to rectify this. Okay, we're working on it. Oh, great. But that's not all, right? So now she also claims to be a self-made entrepreneur. Okay, hey, I built this very successful business from the ground up. Okay, well, he happened to have left out his family's considerable financial support in helping to build that. What is now a very successful aerial firefighting business, valued at $900 million. Wow. So here's the thing about this, okay? If you're a wealthy person, if you had a lot of breaks growing up and, all that stuff, don't try to hide it because the internet will find out, okay? People will know when you're bullshitting them. Look, I can't stand rich people claiming that they're self-made when they've actually received a small $1 million loan from their parents, their family, to go start a business, or they have parents that are, well-to-do, that are trustees on very important corporate company boards, that can help you by networking with other very wealthy investors to help you with your ideas. Okay? This is not the America that people in rural America actually know. Okay? That's not the average, I grew up poor in the country kind of lifestyle. All right? That's not who this guy is. Look, I lived in the country for some time when I was growing up. Okay? I actually did live next to a dairy farm. Okay, and when I was young, I worked at that dairy farm for a little bit of extra spending money. I was pretty young, but learned how to drive. What was it? One of those the cat things with the double sticks. Kind of cool, even though I was nowhere near old enough to be able to actually legally drive one of those things. So don't tell anybody, right? But anyway, no, that's how I grew up for a few years of my life. And I was also poor. Food stamp poor. Not the most impoverished person, but again, I did not grow up like this guy. This guy, very well to do. He never had to experience any kind of poverty, and good for him, right? I'm not out there saying that you should have to experience poverty. No one should have to experience poverty. But if you're going to go out there and say that you're self-made, actually be self-made. Okay? Or don't lie to people. Don't BS them about the breaks that you've had. And good for you for having those breaks. Just cut the crap. Stop trying to pretend that you identify with, the average rural poor Montanan, okay, or wherever you're trying to run at, and just be honest. Stop pretending to be something that you're not. Because people, they're going to see right through you.